Picture yourself like thousands of miles away from your own bed.
Right.
The street signs are completely illegible to you. The social customs are this absolute minefield you haven't mapped out yet. And honestly, just the sheer cognitive load of existing in a foreign language is draining your battery by noon every day.
Oh, it's exhausting.
Exactly. You have zero physical access to your support systems. I mean, you can't just drive over to your parents' house. You can't even call your best friend without calculating like a 14-hour time difference.
Yeah, that isolation is heavy.
So take that baseline level of isolation and drop yourself directly into the center of a hyper-scrutinized, heavily produced, high-stakes television competition.
The worst possible place for your nervous system, honestly.
Right. You have cameras capturing your micro-expressions. You have industry veterans judging your vocal cords. You have millions of people ready to comment on your performance. The psychological weight is just immense.
It really is.
In that blindingly bright, incredibly loud environment, you need a life raft. You need something to anchor your nervous system. Oh. But you don't find it in like a backstage breathing exercise. You find it by retreating into the memory of a giant singing purple dinosaur.
I mean, the juxtaposition there is jarring, and yet it is completely brilliant.
Yeah.
You have the unforgiving machinery of modern reality television on one side, and then the primal, unvarnished comfort of a childhood television character on the other. It is this fascinating psychological survival mechanism playing out in real time.
And it's disguised as mainstream entertainment.
Exactly.
Which is why we are tearing the lid off this today. Welcome to the Future_Music Deep Dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
Today we are taking on a strategic, technical, and psychological breakdown of a track called Purple Love.
Such a wild title.
It is. This is the highly discussed collaboration between the phenomenal vocalist Gwin Dorado and the veteran Korean producer Kunst. They're operating under the moniker Team CoDo. We have the translated lyrics, the studio production notes, and the contextual history. And our mission today is to figure out how a deeply isolated artist's nostalgic coping mechanism was reverse-engineered into a highly strategic charting pop record.
Well, the context of how this song even came to exist is paramount, I think. We are talking about the crucible of the television program, Famous Singers Need Hit Songs.
Right.
And to really understand the pressure of that specific stage, we have to look at where these artists just came from.
Yeah, because the prerequisite for even being on this show is surviving Sing Again 4.
Which is brutal.
For anyone familiar with the meta of Korean survival shows, Sing Again is an absolute gauntlet. It's a redemption show, right?
Yeah, these are vocalists who've been chewed up by the industry once before.
Or they're indie artists who just never got their shot, and they are fighting for their professional lives. I mean, they spend months relying on sheer vocal gymnastics. They are belting out high notes, attempting to trigger visceral, tearful reactions from the judges just to survive the week.
It is an environment that strictly rewards maximum dramatic output.
Maximum output.
And then the surviving top 6 vocalists are suddenly thrust into a completely different paradigm. Famous Singers Need Hit Songs changes the mandate entirely.
Right. The goal is no longer just to survive a panel of judges by showing off your vocal range.
Exactly. The goal is to synthesize your talent into a commercially viable mainstream hit song produced by industry legends. You have to cross the chasm from being a survival show vocalist to being a charting artist.
I look at that transition from a purely strategic musical production standpoint, and the established playbook for making that jump is incredibly rigid.
Oh, absolutely.
If you are told to make a hit song to win a television competition, the math usually dictates that you go big. You aim for 120 beats per minute, 4-on-the-floor pop anthem.
Give them a spectacle.
Right. You want synthesized brass, a massive explosive chorus, and an undeniable dance groove. You want a song that blasts through stadium speakers, but Kunst and Gwin Dorado, they completely ignored that meta.
They rejected the playbook entirely.
They didn't build an anthem. They engineered a lullaby, set in a vacuum.
On paper, producing a lullaby for a gladiatorial arena, like a live television finale, sounds like, well, commercial sabotage.
Exactly.
If the audience is expecting an adrenaline spike and you give them a sedative, the conventional wisdom says you lose the crowd.
You'd think so.
But looking closely at the sociological climate of the audience, Team CoDo's choice was actually a masterstroke of emotional positioning.
See, I see the emotional angle, but musically I have to push back on the viability of this strategy.
Okay, let's hear it.
A hit song, by definition, requires an earworm quality. It requires repeatability. It needs to command your attention in a crowded marketplace.
Sure.
A lullaby is mechanically designed to do the exact opposite. It's meant to fade into the background. It utilizes slow tempos, usually sitting right around 60 beats per minute to match a resting heart rate. It rolls off the high frequencies so nothing sharp catches your ear. How do you take the mechanics of sleep induction and turn them into a competitive advantage on television? I mean, it seems like bringing a pillow to a knife fight.
Well, if we look at what a knife fight actually consists of in the modern media landscape, the weaponry is different than it used to be.
Oh, so?
The baseline state for the average listener today, and certainly for the studio audience and the judges sitting in those chairs, is chronic overstimulation.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
We are perpetually connected, constantly bombarded by notifications, short-form video dopamine loops, high-energy media. Our nervous systems are redlining all day long.
We're exhausted.
So if Team CoDo brings another loud, aggressive pop anthem to that stage, they are just adding to the noise. They are competing on a crowded, exhausting frequency.
They would just be shouting into a hurricane, basically. Even if the song is good, it's just more audio clutter.
Precisely. But Kunst is manipulating a concept we can define as psychoacoustic comfort.
Psychoacoustic comfort. I like that.
In a state of universal hyperstimulation, the most radical, disruptive thing a producer can do is offer the human brain a moment of actual rest. It functions as a massive pattern interrupt.
Wow, yeah.
When the listener is physically bracing for another barrage of heavy bass and screeching high notes, giving them an auditory sanctuary commands their attention simply by not demanding it.
That makes a lot of sense when you look at how Kunst actually produced the track. He is notorious for being an architect of negative space.
He really is.
In this track, he doesn't clutter the mix at all. He uses sparse Roland Juno-style analog synths, and he actually drops the percussion entirely for long stretches of the verse.
Which is so brave for a competition.
Right. And when the beat does hit, it's not a sharp, aggressive snare. It's a muted, filtered clap that sits way back in the mix. He EQ'd out all the harsh, fatiguing frequencies in the 2 to 5 kilohertz range. He physically removed the sonic elements that cause listener fatigue. It's brilliant.
And that sonic architecture perfectly cradles the thematic intent of the lyrics. Let's look at the translation of the opening verse.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Gwin sings, "Even without saying a word, in my expression, then who do I comfort, hiding every day, tiring, exhausting day? I'll sing a lullaby for you. A certain lullaby dyed in purple."
Wow.
She is directly diagnosing the modern epidemic of burnout. By acknowledging the tiring, exhausting day, she is validating the shared suffering of the audience.
So she isn't just performing for them, she's offering them a utility.
Yes, the song becomes a tool. It is positioned as a mechanism to lower the listener's cortisol levels. It creates this visceral bond of trust. Use a song like this to decompress after a chaotic commute or to manage your anxiety before a meeting. This inherently drives the repeatability factor you mentioned earlier.
I see it now. The commercial success doesn't come from a sudden spike in adrenaline. It comes from soothing repetition.
Exactly.
People will literally put this track on a continuous loop while they study or sleep. That drives immense streaming volume.
Yeah, it becomes a staple.
But strategically, it also does something incredible for Gwin Dorado's personal brand. It takes her from being just another impressive vocalist who can hit a high C and rebrands her as an empathetic storyteller. She becomes a healer.
That transition from competitor to healer is what ultimately bypasses the critical, analytical mind of the judges and goes straight to their emotional core.
Right.
It elevates the music from mere entertainment to an active agent in increasing the emotional prosperity of the listener. It actively works to reduce their suffering.
That is such a powerful way to frame it.
But to truly understand why this lullaby is so effective, we have to transition from the external strategy to the internal source material. We have to ask, who is this lullaby really for? And where does the purple come from?
Which brings us back to the psychological weight of her specific situation. Gwin Dorado's emotional profile during this time is heavy.
Unbelievably heavy.
She is a young Filipino artist trying to break into the fiercely protective, highly demanding South Korean music industry.
The cultural and linguistic barriers alone are massive.
Every single day requires an intense amount of cognitive energy just to communicate, let alone compete against native speakers in a high-stakes television show. She is utterly isolated.
It is an environment designed to test the absolute limits of a performer's resilience. The continuous stress, the lack of a familiar cultural safety net, the sheer distance from home.
It's crushing.
It forces the human mind to seek out anchors, to prevent a complete psychological collapse. And this is where the central motif of the track, the purple love, reveals its true nature.
Right, let's talk about the lyrics here.
In the translated lyrics, she sings, "You're like violet playing in my head." To an outsider, that just sounds like abstract, poetic color imagery.
But it's not abstract at all. When I first read the production notes and realized what the violet playing in her head actually referred to, it threw me completely off guard.
It's surprising, isn't it?
We aren't talking about a color. We are talking about Barney,
The purple dinosaur.
the purple dinosaur from the children's television show. I have to admit, seeing a massive, goofy, singing dinosaur placed at the emotional center of a slick, ambient R&B track feels almost absurd at first glance.
It does feel absurd until you view it through the lens of developmental psychology. What we are looking at here is a fascinating manifestation of a transitional object.
A transitional object. Break that down for us.
The psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott introduced this concept back in the 1950s. Usually a transitional object is a physical item, a security blanket, a specific teddy bear, a piece of fabric, that provides psychological comfort to a child when they are separated from their primary caregivers.
Oh, like Linus from Peanuts with his blanket.
Exactly. It represents safety, warmth, and the feeling of home. It helps the child navigate the anxiety of independence.
So because Gwyn doesn't have her family and she doesn't have the physical comforts of her childhood bedroom, she has manifested a cognitive transitional object.
That's it, exactly. She is using the memory of the absolute unconditional safety she felt as a child, watching that specific television program to anchor her nervous system in a hostile, foreign environment.
Oh.
She is deploying nostalgia not as a wistful aesthetic, but as a psychological shield.
That is wild. I was trying to find a mechanical equivalent to what she is doing mentally, and the closest thing I can think of is a Faraday cage.
A Faraday cage. I love that. Walk me through the mechanics of that.
Okay, so a Faraday cage is an enclosure made of conductive material, usually a metal mesh. Its entire purpose is to block external electromagnetic fields.
Right.
If you place a sensitive piece of electronics inside a Faraday cage, all the external static, the radio frequencies, the electrical noise from the outside world, it all hits the exterior mesh and is dispersed. It cannot penetrate the cage.
It's completely isolated.
Exactly. The environment inside remains completely silent and protected from interference. To me, Gwyn's invocation of this purple love, this memory of Barney, is her constructing a mental Faraday cage.
That is a phenomenal analogy. It really is.
Think about it. The interference she is dealing with is massive. The glare of the studio lights, the harsh critiques of the industry judges, the fear of failure, the homesickness, it's all cognitive static.
Deafening static.
Right. And by retreating into this highly specific, joyful childhood memory, she creates an emotional force field. The static bounces off. Inside that memory, she is untouchable. She is back in the safety of her childhood living room, sitting on the carpet, entirely safe.
And what makes this so compelling in the context of the song is that this mental Faraday cage isn't a passive, quiet structure.
What do you mean?
Look closely at how she describes the memory operating in the lyrics. The translation reads, "Search for your melody when I'm down.
Yeah.
You love to bring it up when you're around. You love like violet shouting in my brain."
Shouting in my brain.
Yeah.
That line really stands out because it completely contradicts the ambient lullaby aesthetic of the instrumentation.
It does, and that contradiction is the point. The anxiety of her current reality is deafening. The pressure of national television is loud. A whisper of comfort, a fleeting thought of home wouldn't be enough to cut through that level of stress.
It has to be louder than the anxiety.
Exactly. The memory of her childhood joy has to literally shout to drown out her current anxieties. It is an active, fierce, almost aggressive protection mechanism taking place inside her head.
And from a production standpoint, Kunst actually mirrors that internal shouting in a very subtle way.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, while the beat remains incredibly sparse and quiet, the vocal mixing on that specific line is complex. He layers multiple vocal takes of Gwyn's voice, panning them wide across the left and right channels.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he saturates them slightly so they feel thicker and more present than the rest of the track. The memory is sonically taking up the most space in the mix.
That is such a subtle but effective way to reinforce the lyric.
But what I find most fascinating about this entire concept is the risks involved in being this specific.
In what way?
Usually when pop writers want to connect with a massive audience, they use incredibly vague universal lyrics. They write about missing you or feeling lonely so that anyone can project their own life onto the song.
Right, the lowest common denominator approach.
Exactly. Gwyn does the opposite. She is singing about her personal, slightly quirky reliance on a purple dinosaur. That level of specificity should alienate the listener, but it doesn't.
It doesn't alienate the listener because vulnerability is the ultimate bridge for human empathy.
Right.
There's a paradox in art. The more fiercely and unapologetically specific you are about your own pain or your own comfort, the more universally it resonates.
That makes a lot of sense. By exposing this deeply intimate coping mechanism, she is implicitly reminding every single person listening, the hardened industry judges, the rival competitors, the fans at home, that no matter how professional or successful we appear to be, we all still harbor a frightened inner child who just wants to feel safe.
We all have our own version of a purple dinosaur.
We all have a mental Faraday cage we try to build when the world gets too loud. It is a brilliant way to reduce the suffering of that inner child and increase our understanding of each other.
Absolutely.
But Team CoDo doesn't just leave the listener trapped inside that internal mental room. The song undergoes a massive thematic shift.
It really opens up.
They take this deeply internal feeling of isolation and project it outward onto the largest, most expansive canvas imaginable. They take us from the childhood living room straight into outer space.
The physical environment, constructed within the song, is just as crucial as the emotional core. Moving from the internal sanctuary of purple love to the external infinite expanse of space is a masterstroke of thematic design.
Yeah, let's look at the lyrics outlining this shift.
The translation reads, "If you float with me in space again."
Yeah.
I want to say how I feel inside. I remember all the time we spent together. We will dance.
Floating in space, it is such a vivid, terrifying, and yet beautiful image.
Space operates here as the ultimate metaphor for expatriate alienation. Think about the reality of an astronaut. You are literally untethered from the gravity of your home planet.
You're drifting.
You are suspended in an infinite, freezing, dark vacuum. To be an artist in a foreign country, struggling with a language barrier, competing on a stage where millions are watching, but no one truly knows who you are, that is what it feels like.
Yeah.
You're floating in a vacuum. The isolation is total.
And this is where CoDo's production elevates the song from a standard R&B track into a fully immersive psychoacoustic experience. He literally simulates the acoustics of floating in the cosmos.
How does he achieve that technically?
I was looking at the breakdown of the vocal chain he used. He relies heavily on convolution reverbs.
Okay.
Those are digital effects that use impulse responses from real physical spaces.
Okay.
But he pushes the decay times to an extreme degree. The echoes on her voice trail off into infinity, simulating a completely boundless environment.
It makes you feel so small listening to it.
Exactly. And he also drops out the low mid-frequencies on the synth, leaving only the sub-bass hum that feels like the vibration of a spacecraft hull.
Wow.
Plus these high-frequency chimes that twinkle like distant stars. He literally paints the void using audio engineering.
It is a stunning example of form-matching function. The instrumentation physically embodies the lyrical theme of weightlessness.
Yes.
But there's a crucial duality to the concept of space that the song explores. Yes, the vacuum is terrifyingly empty, but an environment with no gravity also offers the ultimate freedom of movement.
Oh, that's interesting.
When she sings, "We will dance," she's reframing her isolation. She isn't paralyzed by the void. She is finding a way to move through it gracefully.
Right.
The environment that makes her feel so alone is also the environment where she's no longer weighed down by the gravity of terrestrial expectations.
So she doesn't want to dance alone. She specifically says, "If you float with me in space again." And this brings up a massive point of ambiguity in the song that I really want to explore with you.
Let's do it.
There is a profound sadness in the bridge of the track that contrasts sharply with the freedom of zero gravity. She sings, "Through the end, so to the pain. Why do you have to run away and cry? I've seen your skies blue within the ocean with the tide. Can't say goodbye. With me, it's still time."
Such heavy lyrics.
Who is the you in this scenario? I mean, is she singing to the memory of her family back in the Philippines? Is she singing to the memory of her childhood self, mourning the loss of her innocence? Or is she singing directly to the listener, recognizing that they are also floating in their own void?
The ambiguity is entirely intentional, and functionally, it is all three. The genius of the songwriting here is its layered empathy.
Layered empathy.
Yes. She is absolutely acknowledging the grief of the expatriate, the pain of separation from her family when she asks why they had to run away and cry. But she's also looking outward. By saying, "I've seen your skies blue within the ocean with the tide," she is validating the suffering of the listener. She recognizes that the person streaming this song is likely drowning in their own ocean of modern anxiety. She is telling them, I see your void because I am in one too.
Which means the ultimate goal of the track isn't just self-expression, it is actively therapeutic. It is a song designed to guide you through the darkness.
Precisely. It is about increasing understanding between people. Let's look at the resolution of the track in the translated lyrics.
Sure.
She concludes with, hoping today finally settles your tomorrow again, hoping today goes further. This is an active mechanism designed to increase the listener's peace of mind. It is important to note what the song does not do.
What doesn't it do?
It does not offer a cheap, toxic positivity fix. It never says, cheer up, the void isn't real. It fully acknowledges the cold reality of the isolation. But it makes a promise.
What exactly is that promise?
The promise is that if we can identify our anchors, if we can hold on to our core memories, our personal purple love, we do not have to be consumed by the void. We can navigate it.
Yeah.
We can find a companion in the darkness, and we can even find a way to dance in the zero gravity. Hoping today finally settles is a direct wish for the listener's nervous system to down-regulate, for their suffering to ease, and for a more manageable tomorrow to emerge.
When you look at the architecture of this entire project, the synthesis of what Team CoDo achieved is staggering. We started with the premise of famous singers need hit songs.
Right, a reality TV Thunderdome.
Where survival show vocalists are just desperate for a commercial breakthrough. And Gwin Dorado and Kunst completely subverted the paradigm of what a winning song looks and sounds like.
They rewrote the rules of engagement for competitive music.
It really did. I mean, instead of a loud, desperate display of vocal acrobatics begging for a judge's validation, they crafted a highly strategic, incredibly erudite piece of ambient R&B. They looked at the universal pain of modern burnout, the specific, crushing agony of cultural isolation, and the seemingly absurd childhood memory of a purple dinosaur, and they synthesized it into a charting masterpiece. They weaponized comfort.
Weaponized comfort. That perfectly captures the strategy.
Yeah.
They recognize that in a hyper-stimulated world starving for peace, the most compelling disruptive thing you can offer is an auditory sanctuary.
Exactly.
By providing that, they increase the emotional understanding between the artist and the audience, creating something far more enduring than a standard disposable pop hit. They provided a service that increases prosperity in the universe in a very subtle, emotional way.
It is a masterclass in both musical production and emotional strategy, and it leaves us with something deeply profound to consider as we close out this deep dive.
It really does.
Because Purple Love isn't just about Gwin Dorado's journey anymore. It is an invitation to examine our own survival mechanisms. So I want to leave you, the listener, with this thought to mull over.
A great question to end on.
When the noise of your own life becomes deafening, when the demands of your job, your relationships, and your responsibilities pile up, and you feel like you are floating untethered in the cold, dark space of modern adulthood.
We've all been there.
What is your purple love?
Yeah.
What is that one highly specific, seemingly silly childhood anchor you can call upon that still has the power to silence the void, build a Faraday cage around your mind, and remind you of home?
It is a vital question for navigating the world today.
It absolutely is. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration. Until next time, keep diving deep.